Zohran Mamdani is giving everyone something to agree on. Let's take a look.
And when you're hearing like Mamdani talk about freezing rents and taking bad landlords, this is what happened in North Korea.
With socialism on the rise, Mamdani is unifying the right and the moderate left, with even Bill Maher saying his vote is up for grabs, while Trump is sharing videos calling for his deportation. And today, we're covering it all. So if you believe truth isn't partisan, hit the subscribe button and let's jump right into it.
I'm really concerned that people think that's a good idea and that they think that socialism just hasn't been done correctly. That drives me nuts because I think a lot of like really well-intentioned, really kind and empathetic young people think that that's the way to go. And I do not think they understand the dangers of this ideology, because it always leads to one thing. It leads to a very powerful military government that controls the population. Period. End of discussion. And if you play it out, it is literally the only way they can get people to give up their money.
Yes.
It's the only way they can get them to give up their property. And when you're hearing like Mamdani talk about freezing rents and taking bad landlords and then confiscating their property, you're like, this is step one of what's happened in every communist dictatorship throughout history.
Now, some people will say that's just fear-mongering. But if we look at Mamdani's campaign, old clips resurfaced of him calling to abolish private property, although he didn't run on it last year and mostly focused on rent freezes. Fast forward to a couple of months ago, and he's now threatening, quote, bad landlords with transferring ownership of their property to, quote, responsible stewards. Couple that with DSA candidates winning multiple primaries, and Trump took it to Truth Social, posting, quote, the communists are finally making their move. Over thousands of years, that ideology has not worked once. The game is on. Enjoy watching. Then last week, he shared a video from Michael Savage, where he explicitly called for figures like Mamdani to be prosecuted and deported. Andrew Schultz was more timid with his take, as he criticized Mamdani's policies while explaining why his message was caught on with so many voters.
That's what any candidate that ends up winning does, is you have to be like the candidate of rebellion to a certain extent. Like you even seen what's happening in New York right now. Like you could hate every policy that Mamdani has, but you can't deny that he's at least saying things that tap into the concerns and frustrations of New Yorkers.
Right. You left those people out of the conversation.
Exactly.
And now the chickens have come home to roost.
There it is. So it's like I won't at all criticize him for trying to fix problems that people have when the other guys there are just saying we're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
I think it was a lot of times the frustrations with the last election. It's just like people were frustrated with Biden. They just didn't think that he was all there. They didn't know who was running the country, and they didn't like what was happening. And then she came in and she wouldn't separate herself at all.
This is a point that isn't really getting enough attention. Policy still matters. And one of the biggest reasons socialists are gaining traction inside the Democratic Party is because they're offering voters something beyond just orange man bad. That said, it's also creating new problems, as a lot of moderate liberals are starting to sound the alarm over many of the DSA's policy proposals.
If this is where the Democratic Party is going, where this democratic socialist, this obsession with Israel, with the Jew hating, with they don't believe in capitalism, no prisons, if this is where they're going, my vote is in play, okay?
You could argue this doesn't change much since we're talking about Bill Maher here, someone who still voted for Kamala after criticizing her throughout the 2024 campaign. In other words, he's the kind of voter who's usually willing to back whoever has a D next to their name. But for him to draw the line at socialism and say his vote is up for grabs tells you everything. The media has also played a major role in the DSA's rise. And Joe pointed that out during a podcast with Elon. Now, before we play that, though, we have a quick message from today's sponsor. Now, in our last video, we covered Vault Strategic Mining, trading as KNXFF in the US and KNOX in Canada, and how the company was building what could become one of America's most strategic tungsten portfolios. Since then, the story has accelerated. Vault has expanded its footprint by acquiring 4 historic tungsten assets anchored by its flagship war bond project in Nevada. The timing really couldn't be better. The US remains heavily dependent on foreign tungsten, with roughly 90% of global supply controlled by our adversaries. This goes beyond mining. Tungsten is essential for modern defense, from aircraft carriers and armored vehicles to precision-guided munitions. That's why Washington has made securing domestic critical minerals a national priority. With billions in government support flowing into domestic supply chains, Vault is positioning itself right where that demand meets policy. If you want to learn more about them, check the link in the description. Special thanks to Vault Strategic Mining for making today's video possible.
Like, one of the things that I looked at the other day was mainstream media coverage of you, Trump, a bunch of different public figures, and then
it's like
Mamdani.
96% negative or something crazy.
Yeah. And then Mamdani, which is like 95% positive.
Right. I mean, Mamdani is a charismatic swindler. I mean, you got to hand it to him. Like he can light up a stage, but he has just been a swindler his entire life.
And then you have the young kids who are like, finally, socialism.
There's a whole bunch of free boats that you could, if you want to, go take them back to Cuba. It's pretty close.
Yeah.
But for some reason, people don't do that. Why are the boats only coming in this direction?
Well, who are the most rabid capitalists in America? The fucking Cubans.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're like, we've seen how this story goes.
We do not want exactly.
Yeah, fuck off. They don't want to, the Cubans in Miami, they don't want to hear any bullshit. They don't want to hear any socialism bullshit. They're like, no.
Now, one way to push back against the rise of socialism is by pointing to the countless examples of it failing. Another is to offer real policies that protect people's freedoms, address everyday problems, and then follows through on those promises, especially when it comes to affordability. JD actually talked about this exact issue, arguing that even when people with good paying jobs can no longer afford to buy a home, they'll naturally start looking for alternatives. And because establishment Democrats haven't offered a platform that speaks to the concerns of the average Joe, they're leaving an opening for politicians promising easy answers with unrealistic solutions. And what does that look like in practice? I'll let Joe explain it from here.
Like, what did Mamdani say in his acceptance speech in New York? His victory speech draws concern as New York mayor vows no problem too large for government to solve. And I think it was too small for government to care about was the next point that he said. And this is people's solution. Like, we have so many problems. We just need to redistribute wealth, and we need more government. Like, you're just going to redistribute it through the government. Like, is this going to help normal people? What helps normal people usually is a thriving economy.
Yep.
That's what helps normal people. And the problem with that is some people have to get stupid rich when that happens, because there's some psychos that, go full Jeff Bezos and, you get worth hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
But also, you don't have limitations on how much you can succeed. And this sort of competition keeps everything rolling. It keeps everything thriving, and you get a good flowing economy. Obviously, I'm not an economist. You can tell.
Well,
but my point is, the other side of it is terrifying. Because if you decide what people make and how much they make, and who gets to decide? Men with guns.
Joe gets it. The main danger with the current DSA's rise is that many of it, quote, thought leaders are outright radicals. And their own words over the years make that pretty clear. Their newly released platform only reinforces those positions, making it much harder to dismiss them as isolated comments or old talking points. That's a serious problem because with earlier self-described democratic socialists like Bernie, there was at least some agreement on the destination, even if people disagreed on how we get there. The newcomers are looking to overhaul the entire system, and Democrats seem content treating them as just another faction under their umbrella. Meanwhile, they're steadily gaining more influence from within.